We love the text to speech. Hey guys, um, this is Douglas Picker, your president for Deakin TV for 2022. Today we've got the very lovely Kevin Temmer, the animator from who is at Blue Sky Studios and is currently at Squanch Games with their newly released High on Life. Um, he has been around for a very long time, and is very well known for a lot of his online animations, such as What's the Matter, Martha? Um, Big fan of him myself. How are you doing, Kevin?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm doing great.
So you've been animating for I'd say quite a long time, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I first technically got into the industry in 2015, so yeah, it's been a little while.
Yeah, fair. Uh, have you been doing a lot of animation before you were really part of the industry per se?
Yeah, as a kid growing up, I taught myself a lot of stuff. I experimented with some 3D software and all of that. So I definitely was playing around with it for a while, and then I went to art college and I learned how to animate more there. So yeah, I definitely had some experience with it before I technically got into the field, but I learned a lot more by being in the field.
Yeah, it's sort of that learning on the job sort of thing, would you say?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. What program did you start before you started? Did you start with Maya 3D or was it sort of more?
No. So I didn't even know about Maya when I was a kid, but I found this program called Carrara Studio, and I don't think the actual program exists. I think the company still exists. I think it's called Daz or something, DAZ. But yeah, so I started with that one. It's kind of like Maya, but also a lot different. But I was able to, get my start in 3D modeling and animating in there and just sort of trying to figure stuff out. And then when I finally got to art college, that's when I really started getting guidance and being able to hone in on those skills.
That's fair. Um, so you were quite into animation as a kid, and that's sort of what led you to pursue it as a career.
Yeah, I've been into that stuff for as long as I can remember. When I was still trying to figure stuff out, I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to work in movies or video games. And ironically enough, I ended up working in both, which was pretty cool. So I got a little taste of both worlds. But yeah, I remember being really young and, playing Nintendo games or watching animated movies and being so curious and intrigued by how they did it, just wondering how they created this magic. And I just set out to try to figure out how they did it and learn how to do it myself.
Brilliant. Um, I guess I should say, what's your favorite animated movie?
Oh man, that's so hard. There's a lot of great ones. And actually a lot of really great ones that came out recently. I was just watching Turning Red again the other day, and
Mm.
it's just a fantastic, super fun movie. Um, I'm trying to think what else. I love Disney movies, Pixar movies, some of the Sony ones like Spider Verse and all that. There's just like there's so many out there, and I think what's really exciting is that you're still seeing all this experimentation. You're seeing companies trying new things because I think animation did get to a point where it's like, okay, we've we've gotten things as realistic as they can be. Where do we go from here? And then they started to really stylize things, and I think that sort of set off a new renaissance for 3D animation for sure. And it just makes me really excited about the future of animated films and the fact that something new that comes out could be my new favorite film. I think there's just something really exciting about that.
Definitely, because when 3D animation did start becoming more, I guess, the word is mainstream, we were seeing a lot of like more realistic, like, yeah, these are cartoon characters, but they're walking very realistically or reacting to things realistically. And I think, we are seeing that sort of meld of 2D and 3D animation where we are seeing those sort of I'm forgetting what they're called, but uh, just a lot of the same 2D animation principles being applied to 3D.
Right, right. Yeah, and a lot of stylization in terms of the way it's rendered,
Yeah.
or yeah, so definitely we're seeing a lot more, I guess you could say, risk taking. I mean, I'm sure studios are now seeing that this style is popular, so maybe it's not necessarily risk taking when it becomes popular, and then they're like, okay, we can do this now because we have the numbers and data that show that people like it. But either way, it's still pretty exciting, and I'm hoping that will encourage other studios to take different kinds of risks and experiment with different kinds of styles. So it's very, like, I'm very optimistic about that aspect of the animation industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so exciting. I think we get told a lot about Into the Spider-Verse and how they used different frame rates as sort of a character motivation tool as well.
Right.
Um, how you can use these sort of technical aspects to still stylize your film and still use that as character motivation as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you were college educated. What
Yes.
college did you go to, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I went to the Ringling College of Art and Design.
Nice. Do you have any sort of fun stories from your college years?
Oh man. I mean, I spent many of those years very busy. I wasn't much of a party animal. I think most of us weren't, because we were so focused on our work. And, especially when we had our senior films, it felt like we spent so much time doing that. And it's funny because we lived right by the beach. This is in Sarasota, Florida. And I feel like I can count the number of times on my hand that I actually went to the beach because I was just so busy working on stuff. And I think it's good to be passionate about what you're doing, but it's also really important to have, that sort of that work life balance and be able to enjoy your life too. And I think maybe that's something I would have done a little differently if I went back again, is maybe sort of enjoy my free time a little more. But I did really like the people I met there. There's a lot of people that I still talk to. There's a lot that I worked in the industry with. So that is one thing that I really appreciate about my college experience, is the great connections I made, and the friends I made.
That's great. So how long were you studying at college for your uh, animation? Was it an animation degree or was it sort of like a major minor sort of thing?
Yeah, it was a bachelor in computer animation. It was 4 years.
4 years, nice, nice. Yeah, you you spoke a bit about having that sort of free time, using that to, experience things outside of just doing your degree, which I think even I think a lot of universities now are really trying to push for that because storytelling, you need to sort of have stories to tell.
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
But that's great. I didn't know that universities were pushing that now. I think that that's really good, because
yeah. At least here in
I don't
Australia, we get that quite a lot.
know. That's true. I have a feeling that there might be a difference, because I think there is sort of a lot of toxicity still here in terms of, like, capitalism driving people's sense of productivity and whatnot. And I think that, going to college, I feel like, even though teachers would say, like, oh, don't work yourselves too hard, and I think there still was a lot of pressure, or
Yeah,
unsaid pressure, unspoken pressure, that you need to, like, really work hard to do what you need to do. And I think that's just sort of, and the thing is, like, at least here right now in America, and probably other places too, there are problems with the animation industry in terms of, people being overworked and underpaid. And you've seen things with the New Deal for animation where people are trying to, get people more rights, and better treatment in the industry, because it seems like people are so undervalued. And so that is one of the things that has been, kind of upsetting to me as I've like learned more about how like so much in the industry still really needs to change. But it's really nice to hear that like places like in Australia or other places, um that they're pushing for like more of the work life balance, because I think that's going to be the future of, not just this industry but any industry, if we want to make sure that people are going to be happy and not burn themselves out. Because I think that's one of the problems with this industry is people burn out so quickly because it just sort of, drains the energy out of them when they're working so hard. um but I'm kind of rambling, but the point is that when I hear like universities actually pushing like a positive mindset like that, that gets me really optimistic about it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, because the worst thing you can do is really get burned out on something you're passionate about, because it's the worst feeling in the world where it's like I'm supposed to love this thing, but right now I really don't, and it's very
Yes.
demotivating. And hopefully more universities are really pushing the it's more so from a storytelling perspective, like being able to experience life and being able to sort of tell stories based off that. And
Yes,
mm,
I definitely have heard that mentality before. I think maybe even in college too, just of like, yeah, you have to experience the illusion of life to actually recreate the illusion of life. And so I think that is a really good mentality. But I think it's like, not only should that be your motivation, like I don't think you should only live your life to help with your animation storytelling. I think you should also live your life to just live your life, because I think it's important to enjoy aspects of it and not think that everything you're doing has to be toward productivity or your artistic career.
yeah, definitely. Would you say that there are like hobbies that you do now that are completely unrelated to what you do as both an animator and as well as a songwriter?
Well, I guess now I'm immediately becoming a hypocrite, because I would say that all my hobbies are very artistic and connected to, you know, creating things. But that's also because I really do enjoy creating things. But
Mm.
I will say that I still do try to make time to hang out with friends and do things that are completely not art related. But usually, when I'm on my own, uh, I'm either relaxing and watching something, or I'm creating something.
Yeah. There's always that burning passion to create, you'd say.
For sure, for sure. But that's why I do really enjoy hanging out with friends, because it forces me to kind of step outside of that and just, become involved in something else, and not think about creating things, and just be able to sort of exist and enjoy myself, and interact with other people, which is something I've learned so much about the value of, especially after this, or during this pandemic. And really, understanding the value of human connection and just all of that.
Definitely. I think even hermits like myself have agreed that the pandemic has really shown the value of social connection very, very much.
Yes, I mean, I definitely would classify myself as a hermit as well. So, at the when the pandemic was starting off, I was thinking, oh, this isn't so bad. I kind of like just sort of, having all this time to myself. But then it started to really hit me. The isolation really got to me, and I was fortunate enough to sort of like make a new friend group over the pandemic. Um, and that became sort of my survival. Like it really helped get me through it. But I still do really enjoy my alone time. So it's just sort of about finding that balance between, friendship and sort of my own space, and creating things on my own.
Yeah, fair. I guess we should talk about your experience working with Blue Sky Studios. I believe
Yeah.
they're defunct now, aren't they? Or they're sort of
Yes.
gone.
Well, yeah. So Disney, bought a 20th Century Fox a little while ago, and then they shut down Blue Sky Studios after a little while.
How long were you working at Blue Sky Studios?
I believe 2 to 3 years.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you worked on what was it? I had it up just earlier. It is now not here in front of me. Let me double check that. It was Spies in Disguise, correct? As well as
Yeah.
Ice Age Collision Course.
Yes. And Ferdinand the Bull.
Yeah. So you're in part of the animation department for that one. What
Yes.
what does that entail in the industry? Sort of, being part of the animation department. What sort of things were you doing, sort of day to
Right.
day?
So when you're working at a studio that big, the roles are highly specialized, right? So I was only doing animation, the everything is like rigged, and they already have like storyboards and the layout done and everything. Um and so they'll every shot would start off with a kickoff. I'd go into a room, the directors would be there, and they would be explaining the different shots for each sequence to a group of animators. And they'd be just talking about what they want in the shot. And then we go and we take a pass at that shot. We start animating it in Maya. We had supervisors that we would constantly show our work to, our progress to. And once progress is approved by a supervisor, then you then show it to a director for approval. And you get notes from the director. And then you take it back and you work on the shot more, and then you show it to the supervisor again, and then the director again, and you keep doing that until the director says final, and then everyone claps, and then you move on to the next shot, and you keep doing that until the movie is done, and then you go on to the next movie. And that's
Yeah,
animation.
that's
It's so
animation.
simple.
Yeah, but from the sounds of it, it's pretty hands-on. Quite a lot of doing a lot of animation and then having to get it constantly checked over and over and over again for what is considered a very, very long period of time with animation.
Yes. And so the thing is, and that's kind of the thing that this was like a huge learning experience for me, because I kind of learned about the things that I do like and the things that I don't like. I started to kind of realize that like this sort of hands-on, very involved pipeline wasn't the kind of environment I felt like I was thriving in. I felt like constantly having to address notes from the directors and the supervisors. It just felt it didn't feel like I had a lot of creative freedom. And the places I worked after that, there were very like smaller studios, but because of that, because of the nature of that, I was given a lot more creative freedom in my roles, and I found that I really enjoyed that a lot more. Even though it was really cool working on these big movies, I think I just prefer to be in a space where I can kind of be set aside to do my own thing, and still get feedback, of course, but very more spaced out feedback, and not as much where it's not like someone has a direct vision in their head already. It's more like I can sort of come up with a vision, and then and hopefully that vision is satisfies them, and if not, I get notes and change it. But I think that's the kind of work I enjoy more, and that's the kind of more of the kind of work I've been doing recently, so I'm very fortunate about that.
Yeah. So at Blue Sky, would you say it wasn't as much collaborative, but more so just, being told what to do and just having to do it?
Yeah, well, sort of. I think like, so I think everyone is really different, right? I think there were a lot of animators there that really thrived in that environment and were able to turn that into and be collaborative, and sort of turn that into a collaborative experience. But I think it just felt like I kept hitting a wall, and because of that, it didn't feel very collaborative to me, because it just wasn't the sort of pipeline or working style that I guess fit the way that I wanted to work. And yeah, so I feel like, because like I said, I kind of like being put assigned something, being put in a room and say, okay, do this, and I take a huge pass at it, and then finally show it instead of having to like constantly show over and over again. So I think it's really just like everyone has their strengths and weaknesses and environments that they thrive in. And I think that being at Blue Sky, that was super important to me because I learned what I like and what I don't like. And that allowed me to think about that as I continued my, career afterward. Um, and I think I learned a lot about how I really enjoy making projects on the side. I think when I was at Blue Sky, there were certain ways I wasn't feeling creatively fulfilled, and and that inspired me to start doing my own projects on the side. Right, I started writing like songs on the side and making music videos, and that sort of led me to where I am now in terms of like with my YouTube channel and stuff like that. So I really think like once you start your job in the industry, the learning isn't over, even though you're out of school. It's really when the learning begins, and not just like the technical aspects, but you learn about yourself. You learn about what you want out of this industry and what you want out of life and
Hmm.
being an artist.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I guess also we sort of touched on animators' rights a little bit, I think, before we started
Yeah.
recording. Um, and you talk about that quite a lot on Twitter as well, mentioning these sort
Mhm.
of big happenings in the industry where companies are exposed for having not treated their animators very well, and
Right.
just in general, just making things more comfortable and just better living conditions for animators. Um, you know, not saying that Blue Sky did that at all, but sort of as an animator, what sort of things do you think that the industry just hasn't really touched on yet?
Hmm. Well, it seems like they're starting to touch on things with the new deal, but some of the problems with that, and I've been discussing that with some friends of mine, is that it seems like they might not be going far enough in terms of the demands. um One thing is like we've proven through this pandemic that we can work from home, that working from home, animators and artists can effectively work from home and still make huge successful projects. And so there's really no need or excuse to force anyone to come into the studio anymore. I think we should still give people a choice who want to come into the studio, because I think some people thrive in being around other people and collaborating in that sense, but other people don't need that, and other people can do just fine and do even better um, from their own homes. And when you start talking about saving money on commuting, studios could save money on space if they don't need to rent as much space. So I really see it as a win-win for both studios and employees. And it seems like the terms of the new deal are starting that. They have some stuff about working from home, but it seems like it still doesn't make it so that every studio gives the artist a choice. So I think we still have a ways to go on that. um I think we need to like approach certain things with like burnout, in terms of like maybe readjusting deadlines so that crunch time could be limited or just non-existent. I'm not sure if you've heard of the term crunch time or.
Yeah, it's still a thing here in Australia.
Okay.
We have that here as well. I'm not 100% aware of how crunch works here in Australia, but I think it'd be on the same vein as America in some ways. Um, in terms of animation, I'm not 100% sure, but it is usually like companies are very strict where it's just like, here's here is the deadline. It needs to be done by this deadline, and that's it. Like, just from there,
Right.
you get the work done.
Yeah, and I just think, I don't know, I think people studios could go about it a lot differently. I obviously don't know all of the things involved in terms of like at an executive level or all that, but it just seems to me that there's a lot of things in this industry that could be different, that could be a lot better, and people could be treated a lot better. They could have a better work-life balance, get paid better, and still make good products and still make studios a lot of money. You know, I don't think these things have to mean that studios aren't going to make money anymore, that it's going to come at like this big sacrifice. I really think it's the opposite. I think that artists that are happy and healthy and well rested are going to make a better product than artists that don't have enough sleep, that have hand pain from working too much. You know, I think that right now studios are prioritizing the product over the artists, but if you actually start prioritizing the artists, you're gonna make the product better. And I think they just don't see that because they just see everything as numbers and data, and not sort of like looking at it from another perspective.
Yeah, it's sort of not seeing them as human beings in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Just seeing them as the machines, the gear, the tools that create their product. Well, if you want to make a good product, you need to maintain the machines. You need to, you know, the artists are your most valuable assets. So you need to make sure that those assets are in good shape, because if they're in good shape, they'll make a good product.
Yeah, definitely. Um, we also talk about it at university, sort of being aware that, if you're fresh out of college or fresh out of university, that there are a lot of studios who will take that sort of excitement to be there as like an advantage. Sort of you discussed about
Yes.
crunch culture. It's sort of glorified in a way that's like, oh yeah, you're working super hard and breaking yourself for the art. Um, in ways, do you have sort of any advice for people to sort of be able to healthily crunch, but not completely break both your spirit and your body?
That is a very good question. And you know, it's tricky too because every studio is different. You know, some studios are more relaxed and you have more freedom to kind of figure out your work ethic, and others, they're having you constantly crunch. And I think that it's like sometimes you have to ask yourself, if you're in a situation where you have no choice but to work yourself so hard that it's getting in the way of your health, you need to ask yourself, is this really worth it? Or should I walk away from this? Because I think there are some instances where you should definitely walk away, because I just think at the end of the day, your mental and physical health is the most important thing. And I know you have to make money, but sometimes it's like there are things that you have to prioritize over others. Um, I think that, you know, making sure you understand your rights in terms of like, does this company have the right to ask me to work over the weekend? If I'm not making money for overtime, then, you know, probably not. It's like you really like shouldn't work more than you have to, because you don't owe your entire life to a company. You 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 need to have your own space separated from the company, your own time to do what you want. And sometimes that line can get pretty thin or blurred, and it's hard to tell like what it's hard to, I guess, separate yourself from the company, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to like take a step back and really like think about your situation and think about, am I treating myself with respect? Is the company treating me with respect? And if not, I think you need to start like looking into how you can change that. And if not, possibly looking into other studios, because I think eventually these studios are going to have to change their toxic mentality, because I think people are going to stop putting up with this. I think everyone's really had enough of the unfair treatment.
Definitely. I guess talking about sort of taking time to self-reflect, I remember we had an interaction on Twitter where you were saying you were working at a studio while also working on one of your most recent YouTube videos, which
Yes.
just sounded me because I was like, how much energy can you possibly have where you're doing so much studio work, going home, and then doing what's I would consider the equivalent of like almost a team's worth of work? Like, how do you manage that? Like, that's incredible.
It's very difficult, and I feel like it's something I'm still trying to figure out, because I do feel like I burn myself out a lot trying to balance both my work and my personal work. And I think I'm so passionate about the side work that I just take my remaining energy and put it into that. And I think I could balance that out a little better. I think sometimes I prioritize finishing projects faster instead of like saying, wait, I can just space this out and finish it when I finish it, because there isn't a deadline for this. It's a personal project. And, so I think that's still been a struggle for me, really, in all honesty. Um, and I'm hoping that as I continue to do this, I learn how to approach it in a healthier way, where I can balance out the work and the personal work and the social life and getting enough sleep. Because I definitely have not been getting enough sleep lately. So I think it's very easy to let your passion take control and forget about your other needs in terms of, like, eating and sleeping, mental, physical health, and all of that. So I think it's just important to sort of be aware of that, and like I said, like, step back sometimes and think about, am I prioritizing the right things?
I guess talking about the larger picture of things, a lot of your content that you make, well, I don't like the word content, but the the videos and the animations and the music videos that you make are very topical in ways. I think you
Mhm.
mentioned in the flyer the song about blowing up Mars just to mess with Elon Musk. um,
Yeah.
so do you sort of those sort of animations, is it sort of just in a moment where like you're either scrolling through Twitter or just a news article comes up and you're like, I can make something based off of this? Like how do you get these ideas and decide I'm going to spend the next couple weeks, couple months on this animation?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my ideas come from how I'm feeling about something. I think a lot of my songs and stuff kind of reflect my mental health and things like that. Like, what's the matter with Martha? Sort of talking about like this sort of frustration with the status quo and kind of being trapped in this sort of seemingly never ending cycle by like sort of these capitalistic systems, but also sort of the internal struggle and pressure we put on ourselves. And then there are things like like the Elon Musk one, where it's more like just kind of feeling frustrated with Elon and like how he presents himself and the things that he's been doing, and also thinking like, this is topical. I think people will think this is funny. I know there will be people that won't think this is funny and won't agree with me, but sometimes you gotta like understand that not everyone is gonna like your work, especially when you're like taking a very clear stance on things, especially for someone like Elon, who has like all these fanboys. And I mean, it's ridiculous, everything that's been going
Yeah.
on with him lately. I'm just sometimes I've had to like sort of mute or block him, or just like I can't tell you how many topics I've had to close out of on Twitter, because he gets recommended by like every topic. It's like really hard to avoid him. But
Yeah.
I guess making that song about him it made me feel a little power over the situation where it's like, okay, I can't do anything about Elon, but at least I can write a funny song about him, fantasizing about something stupid, which the irony of it is I read an article that Elon actually proposed blowing up Mars or parts of Mars to, I guess, to, I forgot why, something with like resources or something about to help
Mhm.
inhabit it. I don't remember exactly, but I just thought that was funny that like, oh, he might even agree with this song. So I guess there's no winning against Elon, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because a lot, like you said, a lot of your songs are based on how you feel in sort of that moment.
Yeah.
Do you find it difficult to sort of like, because animation takes such a long time, you are writing something based on a feeling that you feel in the moment. Um, Animation takes a long time. Do
Mhm.
you feel sometimes you're working on it and then eventually you're getting near the end, you're like, oh, I don't really feel that way as much anymore, or that sort of feeling has subsided, but you still want to try and get that done? Or do you think the animation sort of fuels you, being like, it sort of reinforces those feelings?
Oh no, absolutely. I go through these different stages, especially with the longer ones, because sometimes the really short ones I could do one like in a weekend or something, but for like the longer ones, like the Martha or the puppet one, where it takes a month to a few months, those are the challenging ones for me because definitely that feeling of like, I don't know if I'd say the initial feeling that inspired it goes away, but the feeling of like, is this any good? Is this like good or is this really bad? That's the kind of thing that I go back and forth on. Sometimes I think this is really great. I think people will like this. I think people it'll resonate with people, but then I'll go into the, is anyone gonna like relate to this? Is this even good anymore? I've been looking at it so long, I can't tell if it's good or bad. Um, and that's what kind of amazes me about directors working on films for years. I can't even fathom, maintaining motivation in a project for that long because I can barely handle it for like a month or a few months. Um, but I think you just gotta keep going once you sort of like get that far into something. You have to believe in it. You have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in the project. And the worst thing that happens if people don't like it, then you just move on to the next project. I think it's like, sometimes I get into this very dramatic mindset where I'm like, I just need to finish this project and then I can be done with life. If I die in some freak accident, I hope it happens after I finish this project because then I can say I finished the project and I'm done. So I get into that really weird dramatic mindset, but then you finish it and it's like, well, now what? That was like I was being so dramatic about that, but now it's done and now I guess I'll just move on to the next thing. And then you realize like, wow, that felt like the most important thing in the world. And at the time it kind of was. I think it's good to like put that passion into it. But once it passes, it's like, okay, it was just another project in the arsenal, just another thing that I made and went through, and I learned from it, and you move on to the next thing. So it's just kind of funny how like things that like start feel so big, and then you like take a step away from it, and then it's like, oh, that's not as big as I thought it was.
Yeah, definitely. Have you, I guess that reminded me, have you seen Tick Tick Boom?
Yes. Oh
Yeah,
yes.
reminds me a lot of that. Like that movie was quite incredible, sort of that whole, when you're working on a project, you're so passionate about it and it feels like your entire life, and then sometimes it's just sort of, flubbed to the side. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and
Exactly.
it's just having to move on to the next project.
Yes, that film really is amazing. It's just something that really spoke to me in terms of just, yeah, you're just putting all this passion into something and you have no idea if it's going to work, and then sometimes it doesn't work, and then you have to keep you get back up again. You have to take the next steps because that's what writers do, artists do, that's what creators do. You just keep creating. You don't stop. You just keep going.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, it's a non-stop cycle. as scary as it sounds, it never stops. You know, you're always making something super passionate, and then once it's done, it's like, okay, time for the next big passion project.
Yes, exactly.
Definitely. Um, I guess because it's very topical news right now, you've been working with Squanch Games on their
Yes.
new game High on Life as an animator as well.
Yeah. So I don't know how much. I probably can't share much about it, but as you, they released a little animated short for it that I animated, and that's sort of the stuff I've been doing for them. Um, but yeah, I don't think I can really say much else about that.
Yeah,
But it's
fair,
sort of
fair.
like, yeah, it's sort of like doing that kind of thing instead of the main game stuff. But yeah, I can't really dive too much into that yet. But it is a very, like, I'm really excited about this game coming out because just everyone on the team is super incredibly talented, and I'm just always in awe with everything I see. It's definitely like nothing you've played before. It's a ride.
Definitely. You mentioned on Twitter that you sort of landed this gig because you started off doing these sort of fan projects. The
Right. Well, I think and I was afraid that might have been a little misinterpreted. It wasn't really because of the fan projects. It was more of that I had actually reached out to Justin Roiland years ago, and I just started sending him my work every once in a while. I think I have sent him some of the fan stuff too, but a lot of it was like other stuff I made, and I sort of just developed this, the relationship in terms of like every few years I'd like check in with each other and then send them work, and and eventually he was telling me about Squanch, and I think what happened. Yeah, there was one point where he was like, "You should apply," and he got me like an interview, and I applied, and they liked my stuff, but at the time, I think it was just like I wasn't really fitting the company culture. I wasn't super into video games and stuff like that, um, and so it just didn't work out at the time. And then years, I think it was like a few years later, he needed a spot again. I applied again, and then it worked out that time. So it's sometimes it's like the first time you try something, it doesn't work. That doesn't mean you should give up. You can still try again. But yeah, it's just like sometimes in the industry, making connections can really help with that. And of course, it wasn't just like I got the job. I still had to kind of go through an interview and everything like that. But just having that connection did help a lot. He was aware of my work and really liked my work and sort of I guess my style of like animation and comedy, and thought it would be a good fit for the stuff he was doing. And that's why, like, I try to I hope that people coming into the industry, or not, maybe not even in the industry yet, you shouldn't be afraid to like share your work and post your work. And like, if there's an artist you like and you have the ability to contact them, I personally see nothing wrong with sending them your work, and just being respectful, of course, and not harassing, or like if they don't respond, you just sort of have to like accept that, because that the worst thing is they don't respond, or they just reject your work or whatever. But I think that there's a benefit to sort of believing in your work and putting it out there, even if you don't think it's perfect. Because I think just a lot of the time, even if you don't get a job right away or get something out of it right away, sometimes you're on people's radar. They're in the back. You're in the back of their mind. I know with Blue Sky, I didn't get the internship the first time I applied for that, but they remembered me the second time I applied for their internship. So yeah, I think like you really can't hide yourself from the world. It's really easy to be your own worst critic and to be afraid of putting yourself out there, because you see everyone else's work and you think, oh my gosh, everyone else is so much better than me. There's no way in a million years they'd want me. But it's like that kind of thinking is just gonna prevent you from getting anywhere.
Hmm.
So I think it's really important to put yourself out there. And if there are artists out there, like I said, that have contact information or on Twitter or whatever, I say, like, send them a message. Still be respectful. Don't, shove a lot in their face, but just, be like, hi, I respect your work. Here's some of my work. And then and see what happens, because you never know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're us creators are our own sort of obstacle we have to get over in ways. We are
Yes,
our own
definitely.
worst critics, and we're constantly getting in our own ways at times because we're just like, oh, what if they don't like it? And it's just like you might as well send it off. And like you said, if you don't get a reply, that's fine. You still shot your shot, and that's what matters.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I guess sort of talking about working on your own projects at uni, we sort of because our sort of generation is more online involved, a lot more of the
Right.
YouTube content, a lot more of the TikTok esque sort of
For sure.
escapades.
Yeah.
Um, the topic that we often bring up is this idea that online content is seen as lesser than what is shown in like cinemas and on like mainstream TV. Do you think at the moment the industry is still in that mindset, or do you think we're sort of seeing this evolution where people who are making these sort of CG animations and these big scale projects like what you work on and what uh, people like Corridor Digital work on are seen as being more valuable than what they used to.
Oh yeah, I'd say definitely things on the internet are being valued more than they used to. I mean, you've been seeing all these internet stars that are like as popular, maybe even more popular than like film stars, It's things have changed so much in just a few years. And technology has gotten better to the point where you are seeing people making this super high quality stuff with software that anyone could buy or download. And I think that's really cool. Also, you see all these indie creators becoming really successful, and even like a lot of them, their stuff getting picked up into actual series and stuff like that. So I'm very hopeful about that continuing to shift to the point where, I don't know, maybe there'll be a point where it's like you won't have to like rely on a studio greenlighting something. Maybe it'll be even easier and easier as the years go by for people to create high quality products either by themselves or with a small team, instead of having to rely on studios and executives to give them a chance.
Yeah, definitely. And we're seeing that sort of a bit with I think Hasbin Hotel was one of those like
Yes,
big indie projects that first started off, ended up getting picked up by a studio, but really showed that, indie stuff can be made and funded and worked on and released to the public. Actually,
absolutely.
Nicole's an animator for who was an animator for Hasbin Hotel is working on Farfetched, her own sort of
Right.
indie project in the same vein. Um, like you
Yes,
said, indie projects now are still very valued quite a lot, and audiences are still there to really push indie projects out there and really supporting independent people.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Um.
it's really exciting. I think I'm excited to see what happens. And I think it's going to get to a point where studios are going to have to start selling the idea of why we should work for them, because if it gets to the point where it's like I can do all this stuff by just being an indie artist, then studios are going to have to start really increasing the quality of their work conditions and all of that, and give people a reason to want to go. I think we're still at a point where it's like people want to go to studios and all that, but I think people are really starting to wake up and see that there's these big problems, and I'm hoping that they get fixed, but I also hope that I don't know, that there will be even more of a shift in terms of like people being able to create the projects they want without having to get it to sell it to someone or get it greenlit.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I guess as we're getting near the end of everything, you are a Maya 3D animator, and a lot of the stuff you post online, so TikTok and YouTube, you do show the sort of behind the scenes of how you make a lot of the things you make. Is there sort of without breaking the spell or anything like that, or exposing your sort of your secret techniques that make things easier? What is the sort of either the tools in Maya or just an animation technique that you think a lot of 2D or 3D animators should really know that really benefits and makes things easier or just more lively for your animations?
Hmm. I mean, something that I should probably do more that I don't do a lot of is using reference. I think that that's a really good tool because you've got real life right in front of you. So you have all the you can figure out all these things like body mechanics and poses and things like that by just looking at the real thing. Um, Sometimes it's hard to do that, of course, when you're doing something really cartoony or out there. But I've seen like a lot of really good animators just like, and I've seen like their reference, and they have a lot of them just have really good reference to the point where like their reference just looks like a cartoon. um, but yeah, I think that that kind of stuff is really helpful. I think just studying other animations too. Something I used to do a lot is I'd like rewatch. Like often they would post clips from animated movies when they're like trying to advertise them before they come out on YouTube, right? And I would just look at those clips and I would like watch it over and over and over again, just like analyzing every part of the animation. What did they do with this character here? Why does that ease in feel so good? Why does that hand movement feel so good? And really just really getting in there and figuring out because I think you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. There's so many artists out there that have already figured out a lot of really cool stuff, and you can like build on that and utilize that and use those tools in your own work. So I think that combination of like either studying from life, studying from reference, using reference, or studying what other animators do, figuring out why what they're doing works. I think that's the kind of stuff that'll really improve your work.
Like, yeah, yeah, very much a lot of analyzing, a lot of, I guess, watching a lot more stuff and sort of having that wide range of seeing different animation styles, different visual
Yes,
styles, that sort of wider range, experiencing everything and sort of being inspired quite a lot by everything, really.
absolutely. You just, I think sometimes the best thing for a creator is to also be a consumer, right? It's to
Mm,
also take in things, watch things, get inspired by them, learn from them, and build upon that. Take
definitely.
pieces of a bunch of different things, combine them, and make something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess as we sort of wind down and we get to the end of things, is there any sort of like last minute motivation or some final words that you'd say to university students or people that are just slowly starting to get into not just the animation industry, but into the creative business in general?
I would say that try to find inspiration and motivation in the things that you do. You're not always going to like your job. I think like a lot of people, they come out of college with a dream and they think, oh, if I get into the studio I want, I'm going to be happy all the time. I'm just going to be living the dream. And unfortunately, no one's happy all the time. Sometimes people really like the studios they end up working at, sometimes they don't. But I think in terms of like getting by, I think you really have to like think about, look for places to find joy. And if there's no joy to find in the place that you're at, then go to a new place, you know? I think it's really important to find something about your work that you like, even if you're not happy all the time, even if a lot of it is really difficult. Um, but I think it's just important to find something that motivates you, because if you're going to work every day and you're miserable, then it's like, you know, that's your job. You're spending a huge portion of your life doing your job. So if you're spending a huge portion of your life being miserable, I think that really sucks. And I know a lot of people don't have a lot of control over that, in terms of like, oh, this is the only job I can get. Oh, this is, you know, I need to make money. I need to pay rent and buy food and all that. And that's totally true. That everyone has different circumstances, but I guess it comes down to, when you have a choice. If you have the choice to either find more happiness in what you have, or go and change where you are and find more happiness out there, I think you have to make that decision to prioritize your happiness. So I think that mentality can really get you far in life, and keep you consistently motivated to some extent.
Brilliant. Absolutely perfect advice, and I think that is the best way to end things off. Thank you, Kevin, for coming and talking with me today. I really appreciate that quite a lot.
Yeah,
As a
thank you for having
fan
me.
of your stuff for quite a while now, it's very nice to sit down and really uh, sort of understand this sort of, as a creative person myself, it's nice to know that someone who I view as very established and very creative still feels the same way as what a lot of us newbies feel, because sometimes we do have that degree of separation where we're like, oh, these people are way more successful. They can't possibly feel the same way as me.
No, for sure. You know, artists are just people trying to figure everything out. We're all just like in the same boat, just trying to like get by and make cool stuff.
Definitely. Right. So if you're watching this pre-recorded, we've got Kevin's socials down in the description. He is Kevin Temmer Tunes on YouTube and Kevin Temmer on Twitter and on TikTok as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to promote?
No, no, yeah, those are the big ones. My music is also on streaming services, if anyone's into that, you know, like Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. Um, but yeah, no, those are the main ones: YouTube channel, TikTok, Twitter,
Mm.
all that.
Highly recommend his music. It's very clever, and I've got What's the Matter Martha on my phone as well as the exposition song. The exposition song to me is just hilarious.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, hopefully we will see you guys in trimester two, and we've got some stuff planned for trimester two. So keep watch of our Facebook, Instagram, and Discord as well. Right. Bye, everyone.